But next up, we have our Director of Customer Success, Tara, speaking with Zach, the Corporate Communications Manager at GBS, and Chris, Director of Global Internal Comms at Henry Schein.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me? Yeah, we're good to go. All right. Thank you, Amelia. I am super delighted to be here with these two gentlemen that I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of times from before, but great conversation we'll have this today. This is by far the best part of my job, when I get to sit back and just listen to stories about how awesome the experiences these guys have built and engage with their customers and their employees. So I'm going to kick it off with Chris. And Chris, you launched My Schein in, I think, March of last year. So
correct.
Just about a year.
Yep.
What was the burning platform for you? What was the biggest pain point that you had that drove the organization to say, yes, I'm ready to invest and build this experience?
Sure. So Henry Schein is a global healthcare company. You know, we're the world's largest provider of healthcare products and services to office-based dental and medical practitioners. We have 25,000 employees who we refer to as Team Schein members in 33 countries and territories around the world. So we're big. We speak a million languages. You know, we do a million different things, and we grow largely through acquisitions. So that leads us to have lots of different systems, lots of different email servers, lots of different, teams bringing their own, HR systems, their own payroll, back-end systems into play, and they're not always integrated right away. So going back when I first started working on internal communications six or so years ago, there were just so many disparate systems to work with, right? So yeah, we were starting really from scratch. We had an intranet that was very ironically called Connect, because it didn't really connect anyone or anything. We had an email system where I could email most of the company with the push of one button, but not all of the company with the push of one button. I had to rely on a relay system of point people in different countries and businesses that we trusted to forward a lot of the important communications that we were sending, and hope that they sent them to their teams, and for the most part they did. But I would get communications back from people who I knew in different countries and businesses and say, hey, how come I'm not getting what my friend did? And we would have tough conversations sometimes with our colleagues on that relay system, who would say, oh, I didn't think that was relevant. And I would have to very kindly say, I decide what's relevant. And and that led us to just constant conversations about what we really needed. And then there were really two things that happened that really forced a lot of recognition among not only our team, but really a lot of other teams. And one was the pandemic, obviously, that laid bare a lot of the shortcomings of not only our internal systems, but really the importance, the importance of internal communications, but some of the really serious consequences of not having really robust systems in place. And the second was the fall of 2023. We had a pretty serious cyber incident at our company, and faced with the reality that not having a SaaS solution outside of our own internal solutions was a real problem. And when you're faced with the reality that you might not be able to trust the email, or can you trust Teams, or can you trust the systems that you normally could, having an alternative option would be really beneficial. Being able to contact your teams, keep them informed of what's happening, being able to disseminate information quickly, having an alternative chat function, a news distribution function, a place where you can post information, really basic stuff outside of your normal ecosystem was huge. And it led to really meaningful conversations. We had already been working with Staffbase on the email tool, had been working for a few years on that. And it was funny, we would have a lot of conversations with the Staffbase team saying, this isn't our I mean, we love working with you on the email tool, but you know what we really do well? We really do intranets well. So that led to really good conversations with, our account executive, Dan Alper, has been just a godsend for us. And it led to conversations with legal and, IT and all the folks on our side who now, they always understood the importance of a really strong intranet, but now those conversations took on even greater importance. So once those conversations picked up speed, everybody really got into it. And we were able to kind of pitch everyone in the language that they understood. And I think that if I could give anybody advice on that, it's really, help everyone speak their language, help everyone understand. As communicators, I think that's something that we all understand, who's your audience. And getting the right people in the room with obviously the right people from Staffbase goes a long way.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Zach, it's been a few more years since you guys launched in 2022, but if you can harken back to what really drove you guys to dive off the deep end and make JBS Connect the next great thing.
Yeah, thank you. It was really COVID initially that proved to us that maybe we were a little bit behind where we needed to be in terms of our internal communications tactics and tools and strategies. We have a really large workforce, more than 65,000 team members across North America, and they're incredibly diverse. They're diverse culturally. They're diverse in terms of dozens of different languages spoken across each of our facilities. But also, we do have some team members that sit at a desk and have a work email and are connected via email and Teams and SharePoint and all these different things. But the vast majority of our workforce, they're on their feet all day. They don't have a work email. And so it's just hard to consistently reach them where they're at in their language and reach them in a timely manner, right? We also, a lot of our communication strategy leaned on, flyers printed up in the break room or PowerPoint slides on a television in the break room, things like that, which are great and effective. But that can't be the only solution in the year 2025 or in the year 2020 for that matter. And so we also needed something because we only have communications professionals here at our corporate headquarters, right? We don't have trained communications professionals at each of our dozens of facilities across the continent, right? For the most part, that responsibility falls on the shoulders of local HR leadership. And so we needed a tool that can accomplish all those things that I just said, but was also something that could be manageable and administrated by someone that was not, that did not have a communications background. And so kind of finding that perfect solution was a bit tricky at first. We had a previous company app that had been implemented that I'll just say left us some room for improvement. And so we moved on from that. And yeah, ultimately, we just needed to equip our local teams with something that they can use to be able to communicate to their teams day to day with the things that are important to them. Of course, it's a tool that I can use to spam everybody with the things that I want to reach them with, right? But even more importantly than that, it needs to be things that are relevant to our local teams. And so that was kind of our challenge and what led us to ultimately identifying Staffbase as a partner to help develop a company mobile app for us in this space.
Thank you. The commonalities between your answers are not surprising, right? And the undesk, reaching the undesk, and every research we do every year after year says they're underserved, they're not connected, and really empowering those local leaders and HR professionals to talk to them in their language is fantastic. So congratulations. I'm going to keep testing your memory, Zach. Going back to when you were ready to roll this out, how did you guys launch? Did you launch to everyone, a couple of locations? What was your strategy?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we had a previous company app that was simply not quite getting the job done. It was something that somebody implemented before, hoping to get the job done, but we realized we needed to evolve from that. But the one benefit from that was we were able to look at what we had and identify, okay, here's what team members appreciate, but more importantly, here are the gaps, right? Here are the things we wish we had. And so we were able to go through that process, Then we, in the very, very early stages, we engaged HR leaders again across the company because, like I mentioned, we knew that we were going to need their buy-in to really help make this a success. And so we sort of tapped into them to create a wish list of sorts of, hey, if we had a company app, what would you like to see in it? Our HR leaders, I spent a little bit of time in HR in this company, and I really learned that they truly are the pulse of our business. I feel like they have their hands on what matters to our team members the most. And so getting a wish list from them of the types of things that they would like to see in the app. So that way it's not just something for corporate communications to send out messages, but it can truly be a great resource for our team members on top of that, and something that can help our HR teams. And so some of the initial wish list items that we gathered for them ended up being early implementations and integrations in the app, and ended up becoming the most visited portions of our company app. So they knew what they were talking about for sure. But then as far as actually rolling it out, once we had something built, we piloted it at a handful of locations across our business to test for things, not only the functionality, right? Of course, we wanted to see, hey, does this app work? Does it do the things that we expect it to do? But also it gave us an opportunity to test, how do we train users? How do we train administrators, right? What are some best practices that we can develop there? How do we develop best practices for implementation and engagement and enrollment? How do we garner adoption from team members? How do we more or less convince them that this is worth downloading on their phone? It's worth having notifications turned on, right? So we were able to test that at a small scale initially. And kind of learn from that before rolling it out company-wide. And then really our initial engagement and adoption stemmed from rolling it out company-wide and then sort of pinning our different business units against each other. They're very, very, very competitive within each other, right? And so we facilitated a competition over the first couple months post-launch to see which business unit could garner the highest percentage adoption for the app. And there was a little bit of a prize at the end of that for whatever business unit was able to achieve it. So that certainly drove initial engagement, right? I would love to think that simply if we just launched this perfect tool and everybody wanted it, right? But also I have to be understanding of the fact that I think this competition drove it initially. But what it did is it got people in the app, and then they realized, oh, I can check my pay stub in here. I can see benefits. I'm getting news that is relevant to me, right? And so, sure, maybe we sort of, persuaded them to get in the app through a competition, but then we really proved our value from there. And to be honest, driving adoption is something that is ongoing, right? Even a few years later, it's still something that we're looking to do more and more. And we really lean on the local teams during onboarding each week to really promote the app. And again, that means that we have to continuously prove the value to the local teams, right? If they're going to incorporate it into their onboarding and orientation agenda, where they're also training these team members on a whole bunch of other things all at once, if we want to earn that space to get the app and internal comms represented during that important time when a team member is coming in, we need to make sure that we're continuing to prove value. So it's an ongoing challenge, but that's how we got started.
I love that. I wrote down, if you could see me reaching for my Post-it, 3 things. Co-creating with your HR leaders, which is absolutely phenomenal, getting that buy-in and having them shape. Competitive. Who doesn't love a good, honest competition, right? And then what's in it for your employees, right? Continuing to have that front and center. So Chris, get ready. We're gonna come back to you in a moment.
Sure.
We're gonna put Zach through one more thing. Since you've had JBS Connect for a few years now, how have you seen behaviors change or different innovation come from the seed of the internet experience that you launched and you just gave us a great overview about?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I have to admit that across the business, across our, again, dozens of locations across the continent, we've seen different different types of success stories, right? Some locations that are still, learning how to best implement it into their business, but then other locations, there are many across the business where it's just part of day-to-day life almost, right? Like that's how they communicate just about everything at what's going on at their facility is through this app. lot of teams have taken internal processes and they have found ways to facilitate them within the app, which means that if you don't have the app, you're going to miss out on something cool that's going on, right? There's sort of a FOMO effect that gets created there. And I think that's when you've really achieved something, when a team member is like, oh man, I wish I had the app. I would have seen that, right? So I think that's really great. But one of my favorite things that gets me most excited is when other stakeholders across the business come to our team looking for ways that our Connect app can help them with their solutions, with their needs, right? Not just my communications colleagues, not just HR, but other stakeholders from across the business that, are saying, hey, we need to be able to do this with our team members at this specific location. We need to be able to manage schedules differently, or we need to be able to facilitate XYZ. And it's just way too cumbersome to do it the way we're currently doing it. Is there a solution with the app, right? That's a big area of growth that I've witnessed. Initially when we launched it, it was our responsibility as the comms team to really try to butt into conversations and be like, hey, what about have you considered the Connect app? Have you considered internal comms as a way to support this, right? But nowadays, it feels like the tables have turned and now people are coming to us like, hey, we're starting this project. It's going to take a year to implement this new integration, this new system, blah, blah, blah. But let's make sure that we engage Zach and the comms team early on because we want to make sure that the company app is incorporated in this, right? And that gets me really excited, and that really makes me really, really optimistic about what this app truly can be for the business, and more importantly, even for just all of our team members. Currently, there's a while back, myself and one of our HR information systems leaders, we were sitting in a conference room and there was a whiteboard. I think it's the room I'm sitting in right now, actually. It was that whiteboard right there. And we drew this map of, the Connect app was in the middle, and there were all these lines going of like, we could integrate this and this and this and this, ultimately drawing out what ended up being a kind of this one-stop shop sort of vision where, if team members have the Connect app, they really have everything they need at their fingertips. And so we're working through things with our IT security team, HR information systems. Staffbase has been a great partner in this to see how we can implement other things with our benefits team, implement being able to clock in and clock out, travel. I mean, all kinds of, pretty much anything that you could want to go to, we've explored how we can potentially integrate it into our company app, which just will better serve our team members and make it something that is truly indispensable, right? Like, it'll be seen as something that just is part of being an employee at JBS. So I'm really excited about that. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it's work that I'm very excited to do. So.
That is awesome. I think you're averaging around 75% monthly users. So I can imagine why people are knocking at your door when you've got that many eyeballs, right, in front of all of your employees. So congratulations on that. And I love your digital workplace picture, right? It's how does this all fit together to make sense and make it easier for people to find what they need to find? And that means you need to plug into stuff. So awesome. Thank you for that. Chris.
Yes.
I got a tough one for you, a tricky one.
Sure.
Internal communications has influence in so many ways in terms of retention, engagement with employees, operational efficiencies. And usually you're one of many people that are impacting those large business outcomes. And I'm wondering if you have any examples that you can share where you have moved the needle on some of those efficiencies, productivity gains, retention, that you could share with us.
Yeah, what I think that partnering with Staffbase and launching My Schein has allowed us to do is kind of foster a mindset in a lot of the team. And I heard this somewhere else. This is not an original thought, but that internal communications is everyone's responsibility. I think part of one of our challenges before launching really the getting away from our old-fashioned internal communications kind of strategy, which not that many years ago was a literal 80-page printed magazine that we mailed to your home. And I can't hear people gasping through the chat, but I assume some of them are physically doing so. and then we evolved to an 8-page PDF that we attached to an email, right? And so we've made, we're like that graphic of like the chimpanzee evolving into the human. And we're like not quite the human yet. But we have really gotten to, thank you, Emil. But we've gotten to a point now where we've gotten past just sort of like that one-way street of communications, where it was just corporate communications, just kind of like sending one message to every employee, right? So regardless of whether you worked in the US or you worked in Brazil or you worked in Germany, even if, regardless of whether you spoke English or not, you were getting one message, right? And it was for everybody. And whether it was relevant to you or not, didn't matter. Everybody got the same thing. And now we've kind of evolved into this situation where now we were able to curate the content a little bit more. And now it's a two-way street. So we can hear what you think. You can engage with the content, right? You can comment. You can tell us, you can send us your story ideas. And also you can control your own news channel, right? So our Brazil team, they don't need us to create an incredible news channel, right? I mean, I'm taking lessons from Brazil. I'm taking lessons from the UK. The marketing teams, the local HR teams that run the news channels in Brazil and in the UK, they don't need my help. They create incredible content, incredible graphics, their own campaigns, their own situations where they are fostering just a culture completely independent of like the corporate situation that we try to focus here in New York. That is just wonderful to watch, and that I take the slightest bit of credit for, because we just kind of like put down this apparatus and said, here's a place where you can do your own thing, right? So if anything, it's just sort of fostering this environment where internal communications is available to you. And you might not even know it was there, right? It's this thing that everyone can participate in. And every time you send an email to a colleague, right, like you're doing it, and you just didn't know that that's what it was called, right? Like it's in my job title, but every one of us, every company, everybody there is doing it. So having an intranet that actually fosters that engagement, fosters that opportunity to participate, even if you're just uploading your photo, even if you're just putting in like your favorite band, right, or your favorite quote, that's part of it. That's part of the environment. So to me, it's not so much, are you posting content, but it's just that participation and giving permission to people to be part of the fun that we're trying to create. Or you're coming to me and you're saying, hey, listen, we're the internal audit team. We didn't even know that this was something that we could participate in. Can we have a page? And I have to ask what internal audit is first. But then I'm like, yeah, sure, let's have a page, because you have resources that other teams, other employees need to be aware of. You have news that you'd like to share. You had a company, you had a corner of the company picnic and you took a fun photo that absolutely needs to be up there, right? And Zach said it best, right? Like everyone can be part of this. Everyone has a role to play, and it's something that we can all share in.
We're going to invite the Brazilian team next time, and we're going to hear from them. That'll be their reward.
And they're all 25. It's amazing.
Awesome. Another one for you, Chris. When you think about, and I think you kind of touched on this, both of you have actually, think about your experience with Henry Schein or My Schein. What other opportunities have opened up, and how do you think that's actually shaped internal communications in the organization?
I think it's just kind of like flattened everything. I think it's taken a lot of like the hierarchy. I mean, from that corporate communications perspective of like, we tell you what's going on. Now it's like, well, why don't you share what's going on in your neck of the woods, right? It doesn't have to be, the CEO or the VP of this, dictating the message. We're sharing the message, right? A lot of it is bubbling up from the bottom up now. That's how we're learning about so many things. There's very few middlemen anymore. It doesn't have to come through me. It doesn't have to come through our team. It is just this lovely kind of shared ecosystem now that is so much more organic than it used to be. And it's really fun to watch happening. We have it's the two most engaged with items of our intranet are the two social walls that we have set up. One is just opportunities for employees to share notes of appreciation for one another. Tara thanks Zach, and Zach thanks Chris for just doing a job well done. That's where so many stories that we learn about just kind of bubble up organically. And then we have our pets wall, and it's literally people sharing photos of their dogs, their cats, their horses, whatever what have you. And it's I see so many friendships formed, so much engagement formed, between people in Australia. I have a dog that's just like that, and that I had a horse. I rode a horse like that when I went on vacation. Like the smallest things foster the most engagement. And for so long, I think we were always looking for like business success stories. This is what people want to know about. But seeing these really small moments foster engagement that lead to real friendships, real actual moments of togetherness that really build. We're so big on team culture. We call it the Team Schein culture. And I think for a long time we were, when the pandemic came around, a lot of us went home and a lot of us still are home. And there was concern that how do we maintain that? The intranet has become a real opportunity to keep that going, and to see it happening in real time, and to have had a small hand in just kind of building the environment that maintains that has been really exciting.
Mm-hmm. I'm sitting here thinking about all the pictures of German pets that I've seen and the connections that I feel to people like hundreds of thousands of miles away. And I'm sure that's more, I'm bad at geography, but it's right. It just humanizes things. So and
to see executives jump in. To see, commenting on an intern's photo, that's really fun. Those are two people who probably don't connect physically a lot. They're probably not in the same meetings a lot, but the intranet kind of just flattens those opportunities, and it just really democratizes it a lot.
Absolutely. I know my CEO has bunnies. I don't know if I would know that if we didn't have an intranet. All right, I'm going to wrap it up with two final questions, one for each of you. We'll start with you, Zach. And this is for the benefit of everyone in the audience that is just embarking on the journey that you guys just explained very eloquently. So for you, Zach, you're sitting as an audience member. What do you wish somebody would have told you before you started that would have made it easier?
Yeah. How much time do we have? No,
you have 5 minutes. No,
No. To be much more succinct about it, though, I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, we knew we needed HR buy-in, right, which was going to require training and continuous training, right? As HR, promotes people and churns people in and out, there's constantly new people becoming effectively administrators of the Connect app, right? And so offering training resources and offering our time to be able to get on a Teams call and do training, right? It's a big time commitment. It's worth it, because if we don't do that, a lot of those locations will just simply drop off in engagement and usage. But it's a really big time commitment. So offering that sort of customer service piece to our local teams and just what that commitment looks like is something that we knew it was coming, but it's something that I wish maybe we would have known, okay, this is X% of your week that's going to be spent doing this, right? I think that's certainly something that I wish we knew. And it might be something that's a little specific to our business, right? But again, we're spread very wide, and we have a lot of different cooks in the kitchen when it comes to managing our internal comms in this way. But at the same time, the Connect app is sort of unique in the sense that it's something that the local teams really have personal ownership over, and sort of maintaining that. It's a pretty significant time commitment. We have a pretty lean team here, and there's really two of us that kind of manage all of that across the business. So if I would say to the audience out there, if you have a business that's large like ours and that's spread, as wide as ours is, definitely consider that as you're mapping out what it looks like. It's not something that you can just launch, throw it out there, send some training documents out, and wipe your hands of it. It's going to be a continuous process that, goes, that process and that management will last as long as we have the tool for. So.
It's as scary as it is to some people. Day one is where the work starts, right? you're building it, you launch, and then it really gets real. So totally with you, Zach. Chris, what advice would you impart on these amazing audience members?
Yeah, I'll kind of build on something that Dean said in his presentation towards the end. Know the difference between a day one necessity and a day two necessity. We had an excellent project manager, and she encouraged us to, she beat into our heads the notion of an MVP mindset, a minimally viable product. What do you have to have on day one? And let's not worry about the other stuff. I'm very jealous that Zach got to roll this out to a pilot group and test things and tweak things and then go to a larger group. We launched this thing in 4 months to all 25,000 plus employees. And there was no moving the date. And we actually launched it. We actually were done 4 days before the launch date, and then we used those 4 days to tweak. And our project manager kept us rigidly on task. And we communications, we liberal arts majors, we see something shiny and we head in that direction. And no. We knew we needed HR. We knew we needed compliance. We knew we needed corporate communications. We needed company news. And we knew we needed anything that was legally required. And there was nothing else. And every time somebody came to us and said, hey, what about this? What about that? We said, we love it. It goes on the day 2 list. So by maintaining that kind of rigid, adherence to the list of day 1 stories, or day 1 content, that MVP mindset, we were able to meet a very ambitious launch deadline, a couple of days early. And I think that it helped us kind of take those day 2 teams, the teams that wanted their content, and it really helped manage them. They understood what we were trying to do, because it was a consistent message, right? We're all about messaging. It was a consistent message about what we were trying to do, why we're doing it this way, and how we're going to get to them next. And it really helped. You said it yourself, Tara. The real work starts on day 1. We got it out the door day 1. We took a deep breath and we're like, okay, let's get to work, because this thing is never done. It is a living, breathing thing that we are constantly working on, constantly trying to improve. And when we look back at the stuff that we launched with, I'm not embarrassed by it, but I'm not super happy with it, right? So we're still going back. We're still tweaking the sites and the pages and the content that we launched with. But it gets better and better every day. And the team is evolving. They're not just Brazil and UK, but people on our team, people who have joined kind of the fun. The stuff that they're creating, how we're like evolving with the platform has been really exciting to watch. But it all started with that MVP mindset.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gentlemen, I have so many ways that I could just dive deeper into everything that you said, and I know I don't have time to do that. I want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your stories with us, for being a partner to Staffbase. I'm going to hand it over to Amelia, and I think we're going to do a short Q&A, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Thanks, Tara. This is a question from Benny to Zach, but Chris, I imagine you also have a similar layout and could chime in if you have any thoughts. But what kinds of contents do your local leaders create for their groups?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I want to say up top that we do equip our local teams with visual assets and suggestions for ways that they can communicate about company initiatives, new benefits programs, things like that. So we make all of that available to them on an asset library that's on our intranet. So if they if they're ever kind of in a dark place in terms of content and they just want to push something out, they can pull from there. But overwhelmingly more successful at the local level beyond any of my corporate gobbledygook that I want to put out there is their own team member recognition that they do internally, right? There's one, I get all of the notifications on my phone for every single thing that all of our locations say. And one of our locations every single day will post, some sort of team member spotlight, some sort of shout out, right? And it can be brief, but usually it's a picture, and maybe maybe the location has awarded them with, a certificate or, some sort of, modest gesture of appreciation. And then there will just be a couple sentences saying hey, this person went above and beyond doing this, and we appreciate them. And that content gets an incredible amount of engagement. It's shocking to me almost. I can put out something really cool about something the company offers that impacts everybody, and everybody kind of yawns, I think, right? Maybe they appreciate that it's there, but it doesn't excite them. But when they see that their colleague is getting recognized, or even better themselves, that they're getting recognized in this way, in this sort of public space, that content performs really, really, really well. And then, of course, you have day-to-day things like, schedule changes, weather, I don't know, all the kind of important day-to-day stuff. But anything that encourages team member engagement and really shines a light back on our amazing team members is the content that seems to do the best.
Yeah, I would just add that we place a lot of autonomy in our teams. I keep pushing back to the Brazil team and the UK team. They have really strong internal cultures. So they've got their own internal campaigns. So we ask for not so much a heads up, but we keep a close eye on what our teams are posting. And we more of we'll go back and look. We don't really ask to approve anything. And then similar to what Zach said, we'll take some global content that we think they might be interested in posting. We don't really dictate. We have global channels, and then there are the local channels. So the global channels everyone sees, and then the local channels the local teams see. But if there's something that we think might be of interest, if there's a global observance, it's national global whatever day, and we're putting something together, we might push it to them, in a global teams channel that we have, and say, hey, here's something you guys might be interested in. But for the most part, we leave it to the teams, and some of them are more interested in posting regularly than others. Some teams will just post, here's the birthday list for the month. Here's an internal job opening that just popped up. But really, we like to let the teams kind of do their own thing. And if there's something that we think might be questionable or might require another look, we'll have a conversation. But that has, I think, happened maybe one time. But for the most part, the teams do a great job.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris and Zach and Tara, everyone. Really appreciate that.